Let's bring in James Carafano. He's the National Security and Foreign Policy Vice President at the Heritage Foundation. So, James, it seems that Iran is really on the ropes right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that report was really telling. And this is stuff that really any administration could have done. Any of the last 6 presidents could have put a sustained pressure campaign on Iran in place. This is really the first time we've done this. Remind people that, when this started, Trump was a 32-year-old real estate broker and Pompeo was in high school. So they've inherited this mess. They've actually done something that nobody's done before, and it's just demonstrating it just lacked the will to put it in place.
Jim, hi. This is Adam Lashinsky with Fortune Magazine in California. You're the national security expert. I'm not. My recollection of the history leading up to the Iran deal is that there were a successive series of sanctions put on Iran by the United States and the European allies. So I'm not sure what point you're making there about this not having been done before.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, that's a good point because that did work, and it did bring Iran to the table. But what they did not do is they never did what we're doing now, which is putting the crimps on that actually went after the surrogates and actually restraining Iran's physical capability by really cutting the money off. So this is a level of across-the-board activity, not just sanctions, but a whole bunch of other things that nobody's ever done before. And what we haven't talked about, which gets into the notion of the Saudi and UAE arms sales, is trying to put a sustainable architecture in place so people can defend themselves against Iranian expansion. That's a level of resistance that the Iranian regime has just never seen before.
James, Gary Smith here. I think we're all on board that the economic sanctions have worked and are effective and will be effective. Now we're sending more troops in, I suppose. Are you worried about that? And do you think this could escalate into a never-ending cycle of sending more and more troops in until we're fighting another ground combat war?
No, I don't think so. People talk about rising tension in the region. To me, it's like people saying, "Did you know the last episodes of the Game of Thrones happened?" I mean, this is like that's the 2-week ago story. It's very clear. It's very clear that neither side's interested in escalating. I was in the military for 25 years. 1,000-man deployment. Those things happen all the time. It shouldn't even rate news. I don't even know why the administration's making a big deal out of it. So I think if they were going to escalate, there wouldn't be 1,000, and more importantly, it wouldn't be these kinds of troops. It wouldn't be support, logistical intelligence.
James,
yeah.
I see a critical distinction here, and that's in the past we haven't, or we've been worried about Iran's oil supply. We've needed their oil, and they could destabilize the Middle East by holding it back or creating problems where they can't ship it and move it around freely. But here in the United States, we're producing record barrels a day, 12.2 million barrels. We are the world's largest producer. So I feel like President Trump is really trying to tap into that zeitgeist, saying the dynamics here, Iran, are totally different.
Yeah, I think it's not just the United States putting more energy on the table, but the U.S. is essentially a pro-energy policy, pushing other countries to do more production, trying to help the Europeans out with energy security and energy diversification. So it's really been a pillar of the administration, in a sense, to take the energy weapon off the table so countries like Russia and Iran can't use it to really drive the behavior of other states.
James, Jonas Ferris, I always feel like Trump's trying to be like the CEO of America. And I'm not saying that's bad, but do you think there's any, when you always seem like there's weapon systems tied to this, and I always wonder, I think he looks at it like, aerospace defense is really one of our #1 business. We're like the best producer of those weapons. He's trying to increase the marketplace presence so that we have a bigger export market to improve the balance of trade. Is that a part of his behaviors in the Middle East with selling stuff to the Saudis? Like, why don't we just sell more stuff to them? Is that in his head, do you think?
I think that's a very kind of superficial assessment of the president's policies. Yeah, he's very pro-American. Yeah, he loves to sell stuff. Yeah, he loves to help industry. But honestly, any president would have told you that a pro-defense export policy is good because we're not buying enough of our own stuff, and that helps sustain our market. So there is a logic behind that. But it's very clear if you actually look at the president's national security strategy, the arms sales, the engagement with the countries in the region, the pushback, it's all for a strategic purpose, not just to make a buck.
James Carafano, great to see you, James. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, President